Welcome to Triple C Stories. Get ready for thrilling African folktales filled with wisdom, adventure, and unforgettable lessons. Don't just watch, like, share, and subscribe to keep these stories alive. Amara adjusted the velvet ribbon on the floral arch, stepping back to admire the symmetry she had fussed over for hours. The scent of jasmine and eucalyptus filled the air, but it was the soft hum of satisfied vendors and the clink of champagne flutes nearby that gave her true peace. This was her world, one of mood boards, curated chaos, and picture-perfect endings. Her studio in Lekki had slowly become a quiet sanctuary of ideas, where love stories were told through color palettes and candlelight. Today, she was wrapping up a mid-tier wedding for a client who wanted simple but royal. A contradiction that had kept her up for nights, but she'd nailed it. She always did. Her assistant, Chioma, gave her a thumbs up from across the room as final touches were being placed on the bride's table. "We pulled it off again," Amara whispered to herself with a tired smile, dusting imaginary specks from her clipboard. Then her phone buzzed. Deo. A short text. "Missing your smile already. When's our next escape?" Her face lit up. She hadn't seen him since the weekend getaway, but his words still made her stomach flutter. Just like Zanzibar. She leaned against a chair, heart melting as she scrolled through photos from their trip. There they were, her and Deo wrapped in white hotel robes, their foreheads touching as the sea winked behind them. It was the kind of relationship that made her believe again. After years of failed dates, flings that fizzled, and one particularly toxic ex who'd left her confidence in tatters, Deo had arrived like calm after a storm. He was attentive, emotionally intelligent, with a kind of smile that made you forget your to-do list. He'd planned the trip himself, a spontaneous celebration of us, and every detail had felt like something out of a fantasy. Private dinners under the stars, lazy mornings in bed. His arm always draped around her like a vow. He hadn't said the words "I love you" yet, but he didn't need to. The way he looked at her, how he said "our future" like it was already written. It all felt real. More real than anything she'd known. She had been scared to fully fall, but in Zanzibar, she had let herself dive. For once, Amara was allowing herself to dream, and that was both thrilling and terrifying. The next morning, as the team packed up the last of the wedding decor, Chioma handed her a sleek, black folder with a golden seal. "This came by courier while you were checking sound." Amara opened it, curiosity piqued. Inside was a letter from an elite event concierge agency, the kind that only dealt with the crème de la crème. The tone was formal but urgent. They needed an event planner for a high-profile wedding in Lagos. The bride's family had asked specifically for someone with taste, grit, and vision. Her name had come highly recommended. There were few details. Just a date, a luxurious venue in Ikoyi, and a promise. Discretion is not just expected, it is essential. Amara's eyes widened. This could change everything. If she pulled this off, her brand would skyrocket beyond Lagos, maybe even land her on the cover of Modern Bride Africa. Deo's text buzzed again. "Proud of you, babe. Can't wait to celebrate you properly soon." She smiled and typed back. "You might be looking at Nigeria's top planner in a few months." She didn't know how true that was yet. All she knew was, this wedding would be big, career-defining, life-changing. She had no idea just how true that last part would turn out to be. The gates creaked open with a regal slowness, revealing a sprawling estate that seemed to breathe history and money. Amara stepped out of the car, heels clicking against the cobbled driveway as she took in the view. Manicured gardens framed by ancient oaks, ivory-colored walls softened by creeping vines, and an elegant fountain bubbling at the heart of it all. The main building looked like something out of an art film. Vintage European arches, latticed balconies, and stained glass windows glinting in the sun. But there was a distinctly Nigerian flair too. bronze sculptures dotted the walkways, and the scent of hibiscus mixed with imported rose petals lingered in the air. It was more than stunning, it was transformative. Amara could already imagine the lighting plan, the aisle runner, the delicate orchestration of florals and fabric that would turn this place into a dreamscape. The magnitude of the opportunity hit her in waves. A successful wedding here wouldn't just elevate her status. It would catapult her into an entirely new tier of clientele. She took a deep breath and adjusted her blazer, whispering to herself, "This is it." Inside, she was ushered into a sunlit drawing room where the bride's mother awaited, a woman wrapped in soft silk and secrets. She stood with the grace of someone used to commanding rooms, her eyes sharp behind gold-rimmed glasses. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," she said, offering Amara a hand that felt cool and practiced. "My daughter is very private. You'll meet her soon, but for now, I'll be your primary contact." Amara nodded, her curiosity piqued but not pressed. Some high-profile brides preferred discretion, especially in Lagos, where a single leaked photo could ignite tabloids. Still, something in the mother's tone felt clipped, rehearsed. "And the groom?" Amara asked, half distracted by a towering mood board leaning against the wall. The woman hesitated for half a second, just enough to notice. "He moves in powerful circles. He prefers to remain out of the planning. Busy man." Her lips formed a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Amara tucked the moment away in her mind. She'd learned to clock red flags, even when they wore silk and pearls. But with 6 weeks to pull off the wedding of the year, she pushed the unease aside. She had work to do. Back in her studio, Amara entered full creative mode. Her walls bloomed with sketches, pastel tent drapings, mirrored table settings, and soft gold lighting that danced on sketch paper. She sent messages to rare orchid suppliers, sourced crystal centerpieces, and sketched an altar design that merged cathedral arches with Yoruba ceremonial motifs. The project was intense, but she thrived under pressure, especially when she believed in the vision. At night, between voice notes and floral quotes, she texted Deo, "I've got the gig. It's huge." He replied quickly, "Proud of you, babe. Can't wait to celebrate." But when she tried to call him, it went straight to voicemail. Then a message. "In a meeting. Traveling tomorrow. Talk soon." The words didn't sit quite right, but she dismissed the feeling. Maybe he was just busy. They hadn't defined their relationship, but it had felt solid. Still, something about his silence scratched at the edges of her confidence. The next day, while reviewing logistics, Chioma handed her a sleek white binder sent over from the bride's family. Guest list, timeline, floor plans, and finally, a profile sheet. Amara flipped it open absent-mindedly, scanning the list of vendors, until her eyes landed on a name she knew too well. Groom. Deo Olatunji. Time stop. Her mouth went dry. The room spun in silence. Deo. The room was too quiet, too still. Amara stared at the name on the page like it might change if she blinked hard enough. Deo Olatunji. She whispered it out loud, like saying it might lessen the weight of it, make it feel less absurd. But the letters didn't rearrange. Her Deo, the man who kissed her forehead and made her coffee just last weekend, was getting married. Not to her. Her phone buzzed again. His name flashed across the screen. She watched it ring, unmoving until it stopped. Maybe it was a different Deo, she tried to reason. Olatunji wasn't exactly rare. But the details matched. The full name, the company listed under the groom's profile, even the handwriting in the groom's welcome note to vendors. She'd seen it on the birthday card he gave her. Her stomach twisted. Her brain, ever methodical, started rearranging moments from their trip like puzzle pieces. That phone call he stepped away to take. The odd hesitation when she asked about his work. The sudden urgency to leave the hotel a day early. Everything had a place now. Everything was a lie wrapped in lace. She didn't cry. Not at first. There was too much static in her chest. Too many thoughts tripping over each other. She picked up her phone, started to type a message, paused, deleted it. Drafted another, this time to Chioma to quit the project, but that too she deleted. It wasn't anger that held her back. Not yet. It was disbelief. This wasn't the kind of heartbreak that screamed. It was the kind that sat quietly in your bones, waiting to either dissolve or explode. She wanted to call him to ask why, but she already knew what he would say. A stammered excuse. Some twisted logic. He'd try to frame it as a misunderstanding. He always had a way with words. But Amara didn't want words. She wanted the truth. Not for closure, no. For clarity. For justice. For herself. She needed to understand how he could stand before her, call her his piece, kiss her like a man with no guilt, while preparing to promise forever to someone else. That kind of betrayal didn't just bruise. It redefined her understanding of love. And it demanded something more than silence. So when she walked into the next design meeting and met Temi for the first time, her face wore the same smile it always did. Composed. Elegant. Professional. Temi was everything she hadn't expected. Sweet, almost shy, the kind of woman who blushed when she mentioned her fiancé's name. "He's private," she said with a soft laugh. "But he's my soulmate. He always says he never expected to find someone like me." Amara's stomach clenched, but her face didn't twitch. "He's lucky to have you," she said evenly, her voice smooth as silk. Inside, though, it was war. That night, a package arrived for Deo, one Amara had prepared before any of this unraveled. A hardcover photo book from their trip, engraved with the words, "For our forever." She opened it alone now, flipping through images of laughter, seafoam, and sand. At the end, a voice note she had embedded played softly. Deo's voice, warm and intimate. "Forever's not far anymore." She let the book close gently. Then she smiled. Not the smile of a woman betrayed, but the kind you wear when you've decided that vengeance, when planned with grace, can be more beautiful than love. Amara stood in the center of the ballroom, watching the staff unload crystal chandeliers with clinical precision. Her notes were tight, her tone controlled, her smile practiced to perfection. To anyone watching, she was simply a consummate professional overseeing another luxurious wedding. Only she knew that every measured breath she took was a fight not to scream. Deo moved around the venue like a stranger, cordial, distant, barely acknowledging her presence. It was a cruel contrast to the man who once kissed her shoulders like they were sacred. The same man who had whispered his future into her ear now passed her in hallways with polite nods and clipped answers. But Amara didn't flinch. She was too skilled for that. Instead, she poured her focus into the work. Fabric swatches, scent palettes, curated music selections, all to bury the ache deep beneath polished execution. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. Temi arrived later that afternoon in a flurry of apologies and perfume. She was softer than Amara expected, almost awkward in her warmth. "Sorry I've been hard to pin down," she said with a bashful smile. "This wedding stuff stresses me out. I'm not as good at planning things as you." Her laugh was genuine, disarming. Amara found herself easing into the conversation without realizing it. Temi wasn't what she'd expected. She wasn't cold or arrogant or entitled. She was sweet, vulnerable, the kind of woman who still believed love was permanent. Amara listened as Temi gushed about the proposal, the venue, her dreams of a garden ceremony filled with laughter and lavender. "He's not always easy to read," she admitted, "but Deo's good to me." Amara nodded, swallowing bile with grace. "He's lucky to have you," she said, the words burning like acid in her throat. That evening, Amara returned to her apartment and sat in the dark with a glass of wine, the hum of city traffic muffled by thick curtains. She opened her laptop and pulled up the document she'd started a week ago, an anonymous letter addressed to Temi, revealing everything. She read it again, hands hovering over the keyboard. Every line dripped with truth, but something in her hesitated. Temi didn't deserve to have her world shattered. Not like that. Not by her. She closed the file slowly and leaned back, feeling the weight of her silence pressing down like an anchor. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Chioma, another vendor confirmation. Amara stared at it for a long time before finally responding. Then she stood, crossed the room, and retrieved the lavender bouquet sample from the table. She held it close, breathing it in. This wasn't the time for emotion. It was time for precision. If Deo wanted a perfect wedding, she would give it to him. Down to the last, devastating petal. It started with the flowers. White lilies, her signature choice for the altar, arrived drooping and brown at the edges. The florist swore they'd left the warehouse in perfect condition. Then came the cake samples. Red velvet instead of the lemon elderflower Temi had chosen. The bakery was baffled, claiming they never got Amara's updated request. A week later, an entire email thread outlining the floor plan vanished from the shared vendor folder. Chioma was certain she'd backed it up. Amara said nothing, just nodded and made new arrangements. But behind her composed exterior, tension coiled. Everyone noticed the missteps, and though no one pointed fingers, suspicions began to stir. When a journalist from White Veil magazine called her, giddy about an anonymous tip offering exclusive insider access to the most anticipated wedding of the year, Amara feigned confusion. "I don't know anything about that," she said calmly. But when she hung up, her hands trembled slightly, and her expression froze. The audience saw it, the pause. Just long enough to wonder, was she already playing her cards? Amara drifted between two selves like a ghost haunting her own life. One moment she was fluffing the train of Temi's gown, watching the bride's eyes fill with tears as she whispered, "It's perfect." The next, she was glaring across the cake table at Deo, who sipped champagne like nothing had ever passed between them. He didn't even flinch. His smile, polished and public, never reached his eyes when they met hers. The duality gnawed at her. Temi's trust, her laughter, her complete lack of suspicion. It all felt like a knife twisting deeper with every fitting and tasting. Amara was there for every tender detail. She helped choose the father-daughter dance song. She comforted Temi during a mild bridal breakdown over centerpieces. And yet, beneath all of it, Amara simmered. Torn between justice and destruction. Between empathy and fury. between walking away or setting everything ablaze. The bridal shower was intimate and elegant, perfectly curated by Amara herself. Rose-tinted cocktails, delicate macarons, handwritten name cards, each detail immaculate. When Temi raised a glass to thank everyone, she reached out to Amara first. "To my planner who became my friend," she said warmly. "You're not just part of the team anymore, Amara. You're part of this journey." The room clapped. Amara smiled and toasted, but something inside her cracked. That night, alone in her apartment, she pulled out her old phone, the one she hadn't used since the trip. She scrolled through photos she'd refused to delete, despite herself. She found the voicemail labeled Beachside. Day 3 and played it without thinking. Deo's voice filled the room, calm and intimate. "I'd never love anyone the way I love you, Amara. I don't even know why I'm still with her." She froze. The words didn't hurt anymore. They landed differently now, like evidence, like fuel. She sat there for a long time, staring at the darkened screen. Her guilt didn't survive that night. Something colder did. Something with a plan. Amara woke to a kind of stillness she hadn't felt in weeks. Not the shaky quiet of denial, but the cold, clear silence of certainty. Her body moved like it had already made the decision while she slept. She showered, dressed in soft gray linen, and sat by the window with a cup of tea as the early Lagos sun filtered in. Then she pulled out the wedding binder, her masterpiece in the making, and reviewed every page. Guest arrivals, lighting cues, mic checks, contingency plans. She began scribbling small, subtle notes in red ink beside certain items. There was no rush in her movements, no emotion on her face. It was as if the storm had already passed and she was simply building something from the wreckage. She wasn't planning a sabotage. She was crafting a moment, an ending so precise it would leave no room for pity, only power. Later that day, she opened her business Instagram and stared at the curated grid of perfect events and smiling couples. One by one, she archived several old posts. Then, she uploaded a new series. Black and white photos of veil details, candlelight glinting off crystal, a silhouetted woman walking away from a grand venue. The captions were poetic, almost cryptic. "Elegance is control. The purest beauty is unbothered. Truth always wears heels." Her followers, brides, influencers, and peers, began commenting with hearts and fire emojis, assuming she was simply evolving her aesthetic. But Amara knew better. She wasn't rebranding. She was reclaiming. Each post was a breadcrumb. A quiet countdown dressed in florals and finesse. At the final fitting, Temi stood in front of the mirror, blinking back tears. The gown hugged her like a second skin, the lace shimmering with every breath. "You made me look like someone worth choosing," she said softly. Then her voice cracked. "There was a time I wasn't sure he'd ever propose. He used to disappear, lie sometimes. But he swore it was all behind him. That I changed him." Amara stood behind her, adjusting the veil with delicate fingers. Their eyes met in the mirror. "Sometimes," she said gently, "the truth hides where you least expect it." Temi smiled through her tears, unaware of the second meaning threaded into the words. That night, back in her studio, Amara opened her planner and flipped to the wedding day. She circled the date in red ink, drawing the line with surgical precision. Beneath it, in neat cursive, she wrote, "Timeline for final reveal, T-2 days." Then, underneath that, another line followed, clean, sharp, and final. "Not everyone who wears white is pure." She closed the book with a click. "Let's begin." The morning sun filtered through a veil of mist, casting a soft golden glow over the estate. It looked like something out of a dream, each detail deliberate, as if beauty itself had been rehearsed. Lanterns floated above manicured hedges, suspended by invisible wire like stars that had wandered into daylight. The aisle was dressed in white rose petals, and the grand piano echoed gentle notes that danced across the courtyard. Guests arrived in sleek cars and silk ensembles, their laughter light and expectant. Amara stood at the edge of the scene, clipboard in hand, but untouched by the flurry around her. She wore a tailored jumpsuit the color of champagne. Her hair swept into a low, polished bun. Her presence was calm, magnetic, commanding without effort. She moved like a woman who knew the power of timing, who understood that silence could be louder than screams. Every step was a calculation. The beauty she orchestrated shimmered with unspoken tension. White roses were arranged in the shape of crowns, not bouquets. The mirrored altar reflected the sky, an illusion of heaven on earth. Even the invitation scrolls, custom hand-inked, featured a quote about truth outlasting illusion. These weren't just aesthetic choices. They were messages, coded, precise, damning. Deo had arrived early, but made no attempt to approach her. He avoided her gaze, adjusting his cufflinks like the ceremony might fall apart without the perfect crease. Temi, glowing in white silk, clutched her bouquet tighter than she needed to. Her smile wavered when she thought no one was watching. The air buzzed with anticipation, but not the joyful kind. This was tension in designer wrapping. Even Chioma kept sneaking glances at Amara, her eyes flickering with silent questions she didn't dare voice. Everyone could sense something coming, they just didn't know what. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Was this the most expensive wedding Lagos had seen this year? Who were the discreet men with cameras near the floral arch? Some guests speculated they were from a global lifestyle magazine. Others whispered about a leak, a secret, a headline waiting to happen. Still, no one dared speak above the volume of luxury. Deo's movements were tight, robotic. His jaw clenched with every passing minute, every new flash of light from a camera. Somewhere beneath his practiced expression, panic brewed. Amara watched from the far end of the courtyard, eyes following the sequence of the event like notes in a symphony. Everything was unfolding exactly as she had written it. The music shifted, the signal. The wedding procession was about to begin. She inhaled deeply, the way one might before stepping on stage or into war. Her phone buzzed once. "We're ready when you are." She looked up at the sky for the briefest second, then pocketed the phone. Her heels clicked against the marble as she walked toward the altar, not like a planner, like a reckoning in heels. The ceremony had reached its most sacred moment, the hush before vows, the stillness between breaths. The guests stood, eyes turned toward the altar, where Temi and Deo stood beneath a bloom-wrapped archway that shimmered in the late afternoon sun. The officiant smiled, hands raised to begin, when a shift in energy turned heads. Amara stepped forward from the wings, her heels soft against marble, her expression unreadable. In one hand she held a microphone, in the other a slender silver remote. Polite confusion bloomed across the crowd. A few chuckled, assuming it was part of the program. Others whispered, eyebrows raised. Deo's posture stiffened. Temi glanced sideways but smiled, unaware of what approached. Amara stood still before the altar, luminous and composed, as if she belonged nowhere else but right there. Her voice, when it came, was calm and precise. "Good afternoon," she began. "Before we witness vows of forever, let's take a moment to reflect on what love truly means." Her voice floated gently across the crowd, each word measured and graceful. "Love should be honest," she said, her gaze unwavering. "It should be faithful, brave, a reflection of our highest truths, not our darkest lies. Love should not deceive, should not manipulate, and it should never ask you to accept less than you deserve. The officiant glanced nervously at Deo, who shifted on his feet. Temi turned toward Amara now, her smile gone, confusion settling on her features. The audience had stilled. A few guests began to record. Amara's thumb pressed lightly on the remote. Behind her, the screen descended like a curtain about to reveal the final act. Music faded. A video began. Gentle waves, sunlight, laughter. Amara and Deo on the beach, entwined in each other's arms. Their joy was unmistakable, undeniable. A close-up of him kissing her forehead played, then a clip of him saying, "You're my real forever." Another, Deo lying in bed, whispering into the camera, "I don't even know why I'm still with her." The footage was beautiful, damning, raw. The silence that followed was a living thing. Gasps cut through the stillness like glass shattering under pressure. A woman in the front row clutched her pearls. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Temi's bouquet slipped from her hands with a soft thud. Deo's face drained of color as he stepped forward, panic sharpening his features. "Turn it off," he barked, voice cracking. But the technician, frozen in disbelief, did nothing. Temi didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the screen, unblinking. The officiant lowered his binder and stepped back. Some guests covered their mouths. Others recorded, unsure whether this was tragedy or theater. The final clip faded. The screen retracted. Amara turned to the audience, serene. "Love deserves honesty," she said quietly, her voice stronger now. "If you don't have the courage to be honest, you don't deserve love at all." She paused, letting the words settle like ash over a fire. "I wish you all a beautiful day." Then, with no dramatics, no second glance, she stepped off the stage and walked down the aisle, not away from the chaos but through it. Untouched, victorious. The estate emptied in slow, stunned silence. The ceremony that never was left behind, flower petals like confetti at a funeral. Vendors packed up with lowered eyes, careful not to speak too loudly, as though reverence was owed to the spectacle they had just witnessed. The chairs were still perfectly aligned, the altar untouched, the cake, 5 tiers of sugared perfection, left whole, a monument to promises unkept. But outside, the world was anything but quiet. The video had already found its way online. Within hours it was everywhere. Blogs, gossip columns, think pieces. The headline blazed across feeds. Planner exposes groom in viral mic drop moment. But the narrative wasn't cruel. No tabloids painted her as bitter or scorned. Instead, the internet crowned her something else entirely. A woman of elegance, voice, power. Deal beneath silk. Screenshots of her speech flooded Instagram with hashtags like #the Amara effect and #say it with grace. Her phone buzzed non-stop for days. Brand offers, interview requests. High-profile clients who once brushed her off now sent flowers and appointments. Her follower count tripled in a week, and her inbox overflowed with messages from women. Heartfelt, tearful, grateful. Some were brides, others strangers, but their words carried the same tone. "Thank you for standing up. Thank you for showing us we can do it with grace." Even a few celebrities chimed in, calling her the planner with principles. Amara read every message, responded to as many as she could. But nothing hit her harder than the envelope that arrived in neat handwriting with no return address. Inside was a short note, simple but seismic. "I knew. I found your photos weeks ago. I just couldn't walk away without proof. That's why I insisted on you. Thank you for being braver than I could be. You freed us both." It was signed simply, Temi. Amara sat with the letter for a long time, the paper soft between her fingers. She read it again, slower, letting every word settle in her chest like truth finally landing. There was no anger, no regret, only a quiet, unexpected respect. What she had done hadn't just been about exposing Deo, it had been about freeing herself and unknowingly freeing Temi too. In the end, they were never rivals. Just women bound by betrayal and the quiet dignity of choosing self-worth over silence. That evening, Amara climbed to the rooftop of her apartment, watching the Lagos skyline glow with its usual promise. The wind carried the faint buzz of city traffic and a scent of rain in the distance. Her phone buzzed again, this time an invitation. Keynote speaker. Women in Business Global Summit. She smiled. Not the smile of someone who had won, but of someone who had risen. Not bitter. Not broken. Forged. Her heartbreak had become her headline. Her loss, her legacy. She didn't just plan weddings anymore. She planned futures. Empires. Hers was only the first. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Triple C Stories. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section and stay stunned for more exciting stories.